Alright, welcome to the Speedy Space Marines series. Today we're going to have a look at how to get the 30k Dark Angel on the tabletop in 30 minutes or less. All of the techniques and methods in this video are focused around speed and efficiency. All of the paints you'll need will be listed below in the description, so let's get into it. Okay, starting off with some green grey, we're going to be using the Artis Opus medium dry brush here, and we're just going to be dry brushing over certain parts of the panels. We're going to be looking to draw attention to the natural light reflections that you can see cast by the hobby light. We're going back to the dampener because we want to avoid any grit or any dusty pigment effects coming through whenever we're dry brushing, and we're looking to accentuate those light lines. Once you've done that, you can create a mix with some Artic blue and green grey and use those to start building up some highlights. Do this in sort of a dry brushing, stippling fashion to start to incorporate some texture and weathering into the armour. And you should be left with something that looks a bit like this. Mixing a bit more of the Arctic blue into your previous mix, start to stipple this on. You can see that we're not necessarily dry brushing for the most part, but more so stippling and building up that texture. Now at the minute you may think that this is getting a bit bright to represent black armour, but we'll be applying a filter layer over the top of this later, so it'll help soften all of those transitions and tone down the colours. The reason that we're working it up so bright is that we want to retain that information after we apply the filter. And areas towards the top of the model around where the head, the shoulders, the top of the arms are going to be, we want to increase the value by adding in more of the Arctic blue. This just helps to bring a bit more focus around the head of the model and just create a bit of a transition from the feet up to the top. Now we're coming in with the Artis Opus extra small dry brush and essentially using this to stipple in texture and battle damage to the plates. We're focusing around the edges and places that would naturally take damage or be chipped during a battle. So you can see this is a very fast process, and we're really just working off that excess paint on the dry palette and then applying it to the model. Just focusing again on those edges and places where we've built up those highlights. Just continue to work around the edges, get some onto the hands, or well, where the hands will be, the arms, places where our marine may be encountering combat or hand-to-hand combat. The shoulders are always a good area to catch as well, because essentially they're there to deflect all those bullets that are heading towards the head. So get plenty of information and plenty of texture into those areas. And around the top of the backpack, again, we're looking to increase the value range around the top of the model just to help draw in some focus. Now we move on to getting our metallics done. So we're coming in with some Vallejo exhaust manifold. There we go, just about remember the name. And applying this all over the metallic sections. You don't need to worry about being super careful here. We're going to be applying some washes over the top of this to create some more information and add some colours and tones back into it. Just ensure you get a good even coverage. With this particular paint, I never find that I have to really apply more than one coat. Covers really well. Probably one of the metallics I would recommend. At least one of the metallic ranges I would recommend the most to people. Again, we're just working with the size 2 Artis Opus here, so we're using a reasonably sized brush to quickly rattle through this. But tend not to work with an overly small brush whenever you're establishing all of your base colors. And then with the metallic sections on the shoulder, just quickly dot those in. It shouldn't take too long. The marine should be looking pretty close to this at this point. Got to do the metallics on the gun as well. Just quickly paint those in. Try to avoid hitting the hands or any of the areas that you've painted previously. It'd be a shame to have to go back and fix those. And then we just want to darken out any areas that we've overpainted during the dry brushing phase. So we're just using the green grey here just to paint over those. Now we're going to come in with some Khorne Red and apply this over the gun casing. Be careful not to hit the fingers or any of the metallics that you just did. If you hit the metallics, just go back and clean those up. And use this as an opportunity to paint in the initial colour for the eyes as well. We're going to be painting these with a red lens, so I'm basing them with Khorne Red. Now it's time to apply the filter layer. We're going to be using Mars Black and thinning this down a lot. It should really only be tinting the colour. We want to avoid this pooling in any areas on the model and just using it to tint and soften those transitions that we put down earlier. In some of the areas where there's separation between the panels, you can let this sort of pool in those areas and it'll create that separation and that definition. But we don't want this to be pooling over any of the flat surfaces, and if it does so, you want to be wicking that away with a clean brush. Do the same with the gun as well. Apply this all over the metallics, all over the red, over the hands, in a nice even coat. Again, try to avoid any pooling, because it'll leave you with like a coffee staining effect that we want to avoid. And again, over the head. Now we're going to come in with some burnt Sienna Umber. We're going to be using this to help tint some of the metallics and bring that battle-worn look to the model. This just gives the impression of some rust or dust and debris that's built up over the course of the battle. We're looking to add this to the recesses and to areas that would naturally accrue dirt. So with the bottom of these rivets in the shoulder pad, with the creases and recesses and divots in the metallics, we're going to be adding that in. And same with the gun. In the bottom of the magazine, we're just going to be building up that bit of weathering and then towards any of the areas that meet the gun casing. We're also going to be applying this into those rubberized sections of the model. This just helps to create some definition within here, because we'll not be coming back in and highlighting these, but this creates separation between those folds in the rubber and also adds a bit more warmth to the model as well. You can apply as many coats of this until you're happy with the overall saturation of the colour or the build-up of the colour. It can take a couple of passes because we're working in such thin layers. We're now going to come back in with some exhaust manifold and just pick out a few highlights within the metallics, just catching the top of each of those rivets and the top of the backpack exhausts. Catching the edges as well, just to bring some definition. You can see that we're not really too worried about, producing clean edge highlights. We're adding in some texture by using this sort of stippling approach to adding in the edge highlights. And it's the same with the gun. Again, coming back with some Khorne Red, we're going to paint in any of the tubing on the model. So there's a few in and around the legs that we're just going to catch with some Khorne Red and get a nice even coat on those. It may take 1, 2 or 3 coats just to build up that colour, but you want to ensure that you have good coverage and saturation. And now with the gun, we're coming back in with some Khorne Red and we're just establishing that colour again, looking just to build a bit more saturation within the, higher areas, or the areas where there's no recesses. So we're trying to leave some separation between the panels now and leave that impression of the darker colour after the filter. We're now coming in with a bit of Mephiston Red, and we're going to highlight up any of the red sections. So just catching the outside edges of the tubes just to bring a bit more information in there. And then we're going to try and hit the inside corner of the eyes and start building up our lens effect. So we're looking to highlight the underside of the lens and towards the inner corner. Just take your time whenever you're doing this and slowly build up that color. It may take a couple of passes until you're happy with the saturation. Just take your time. And then with the gun, we're just going to apply a quick edge highlight of Mephiston Red to a couple of the panels and help build up that color and create a wee bit of definition within the bolter. Don't worry if your lines aren't perfectly smooth or perfectly straight. Just pop them on and it'll look fine. You can add in a bit of an additional highlight or gradient to some of the sections as well. Play around with your highlight patterns and how you want your bolters to look. So we're going to take a bit of intense yellow and mix that together with our Mephiston Red and highlight up the lenses a bit more. Again, focusing on that inner corner of each lens and towards the bottom edge. It's very subtle with the initial pass, so we're going to come back in and reinforce that highlight again just towards the inner corner and the bottom edge of the lens, covering a slightly smaller area than we did previously. I'm now going to take some pure titanium white and dot in at the back corner of each lens. Just take your time whenever you're doing this, make sure you have a good brace and that you're able to apply a single dot. If you have any issues or you're not happy with it, just paint over the lens in black and try again. So once all that's done, you should be left with a marine that looks pretty close to this. I think this is a really effective tabletop standard for your Dark Angels and something you can do extremely quickly. I'm going to show you how I put together the base for this. I took some Vallejo thick mud and just applied that all over the base. You can do this with a brush as well, but I just used this hobby tool that I have that just makes life that wee bit easier. Saves me ruining as many brushes as well. If you are doing this with a brush, I do recommend that you do it with an old battered brush as well. Don't use any new brushes or any sable brushes when doing this. Just work it out to the edge and then let that dry. Once it's dry, we're going to come in with the Martian Iron Earth and we're going to apply a few dollops of this over the base. That'll help give our mud this like crackled dry effect on the top. Don't worry that it's a different color, we are going to be coming in and painting this. So once it's all dry, you get these sort of crackled effects on the top and it just gives the mud a bit of a different impression and adds a wee bit more information to the base. So prime that black and then come in again with our large dry brush and start building up some Mournefang Brown over the base. Just apply this in a normal dry brushing fashion. Actually, I'm probably applying this in more of a layer, getting the color down quickly. Mix a bit of XP88 in with your previous color and just start to dry brush over. Use circular motions and keep the pressure light so you're starting to pick out the detail within the base. Then using some Tallarn Sand, mix that in with your XP88 and begin picking out a few more of the details. Again, light pressure, circular motions, and just pick out those edges of the base. And then some pure Tallarn Sand just to hit the last few highlights. This is just to give us some color variety throughout the base before we come in with a wash over the top of this. So to get a bit more saturation and color into the base, we're going to be using some burnt sienna umber and just applying this in a thick wash over the base. If you have like Agrax Earthshade or another similar color, you can just use that. And be quite liberal whenever you're doing this as well, because you want this to help add some tone to the recesses. And then come back in with your previous dry brush mixes with the XP88 and the Bestial Brown, or Mournefang Brown, I think, sorry, as it is now, and start building up those tones again. Adding some Tallarn Sand into the mix just really hit those edges and give the impression that the mud is dried on the top. With the remaining paint that's on your brush, just apply this over the base of the feet, or the bottom of the feet and the bottom of the greaves, just to give that impression that the marine has been walking through the dirt and is incorporated into the base. Once you're all said and done, it should look something like this. And here is the finished product. These will look banging on the tabletop. If you manage to put together 20 of these, they will look really impressive. You can apply a Dark Angels transfer to the shoulder pad as well. I just didn't have any to hand whenever I was doing this. So really happy with the result. I think the eyes look great. Nice strong saturated reds for the bolter and the tubing. Looks really good with those recessed shades of the burnt sienna umber too. Hopefully you found that useful. If you have any comments, questions or suggestions for future videos, please drop them below in the comments. And if you want to take your painting to the next level, I have a Patreon that's focused around feedback and coaching. You'll also get access to exclusive content and guides. I stream on Twitch if you want to come by and hang out, and we have a Discord where you can share your work and get involved with the community. All of the links can be found below in the description, but before you go, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you at the next one. Thank you for watching.